So, Laura, you ran VisionEdge Marketing. What made you pick marketing as a career? What made you go, oh, I'm excited about this?
Oh, okay. Wow. Let's start at the beginning here.
Hmm.
So I've been in marketing pretty much my entire decades long career in one capacity or another. In many ways, we're all in marketing because we all have some kind of product or service, even if it's ourselves
Yeah.
that we're marketing. So it's been in my DNA for a long time. I always tell this story that, whether it was shoveling snow or raking leaves or it's just, selling the world's finest chocolate. It's always been about how do you create customer value because the purpose of a business is to create a customer. And the two things that do that are marketing and innovation. So I've always been inspired by that philosophy. And well, I started my career basically in marketing. We have a lot in common, Ellie, in that you started your career as an accountant.
Hmm.
And I always say that I've only worked for two kinds of people in my corporate career, and that was engineers and accountants. They've always been about the numbers. So I've always been pretty much on the numbers side of marketing. When you think about marketing, there's the upstream part of marketing and the downstream part of marketing. And I've done the entire gamut along with marketing operations and MarTech. But in my career, whether it's been in the upstream or the downstream, the numbers have been really important. And that was impressed upon me by the very first professional opportunity I had where I worked for an accountant in a financial services organization. So you can relate to that, and so can possibly many of your community members.
Hmm.
And my primary responsibility was to help them grow share of wallet. So I learned about numbers and customer retention and customer value pretty early in my career. And I thought I was fascinated by it, so it propelled me forward.
That's cool. That's cool. So working with engineers, accountants, yeah, I really enjoy working with accountants and doing their marketing as well. They're a great bunch to work with. So yeah, so do you still work with engineers and accountants, or what does your kind of day to day look like now?
Oh, yes, because VisionEdge Marketing, which was founded in 1999, we work predominantly in the B2B space. The majority of our customers are mid-market companies in manufacturing,
Mhm.
technology, financial services, life sciences. So essentially, very left-brain oriented people typically run those companies. I love working with all of them. And the nice thing about, when you do marketing well, you can move the needle for a company. You can really see how you are creating value and impact. And good marketing people speak the language of business, have financial and business acumen, and can talk in terms, especially in their numbers, that matter to the leadership team and to the board. And so, good marketing professionals understand that, and they don't get um, mired down in activity and output measures. It's not that those don't matter. Obviously, we have to have activity and output in order to have progress. But when it comes to really communicating value, they are speaking in the language of business. And the best way to learn that is by working for finance people.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, like you mentioned, I was in accounting initially, and then I do mostly marketing for accounting firms, which is actually really cool. But it's funny because a lot of people would think, oh, marketing is very creative. It's very, free flowing and branding and all of that communications, but it's actually like, yes, it is about all of that too, but it's also like the numbers. And so looking at data, looking at web traffic, looking at cost per acquisition and all of these other metrics that measure the actual performance of the marketing campaign, and are we getting results, and what is the bottom line. And I think having a background in marketing, and you probably find this working with accountants and engineers, of seeing the value in, okay, like how can we measure the actual result of the marketing and communicate that to people? Because it's like, if you can show them this is the result we're getting, like they'll keep paying. Obviously they'll be happy and they'll be getting clients. So it's been a really fun opportunity to marry, yeah, both marketing, which is more creative, and accounting and data analytics, which is obviously more scientific, marrying those two together and seeing them work really well hand in hand.
I'm very proud of the fact that I'm considered one of the pioneers of marketing performance measurement and management. And the most important thing I think that marketing, anyone in marketing, whether you're down in the trenches or you're in the road, leading the way, and sort of the quarterback for the team, so to speak, as we say here in Texas, is that you have to understand what are the business results expected for the investment, not what are the results you got from the campaign, but what were the business results expected, and have clarity about that in the beginning, because otherwise, what I find many people in marketing do who want to be around and demonstrate their numbers and their value is they talk about the results of the campaign, which is great, but if we don't understand what it was supposed to do for the business and in advance, and then set the target accordingly, then when we talk about the results of the campaign, we can arbitrarily declare success, but people in the leadership team can arbitrarily declare failure because we haven't agreed what is an acceptable success. What are the parameters of success? So if anyone that's in marketing is listening to this, if I could impart one key thing, it's really getting clarity around the performance targets at the front end and having agreement on those performance targets in terms of what the business leadership expects, and then being able to convey how well you achieve those, and then what did you do to achieve those, and how can you recreate that momentum going forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. Having that concrete expectation or goal. Something I like to ask my clients is, or prospective clients is, what would like a home run look like for you? What is your end goal? Like how many clients do you want to onboard per month through organic marketing or paid marketing? Like what is the end goal? Because if I don't know that, then I don't know how to work towards that for them. So I think that's a really cool point. And I know another acquaintance that works in marketing, he's actually put together a kind of like an ROI calculator where he puts in, say, the list size, the email list size, the offer price that the customer is selling. This is more probably for service or product based businesses that have a fixed price. So he'll put all of that in and he'll be able to say, look, if we get an open rate of this or a sales close rate rather of this, then we can expect to make you this much in revenue. And then that's how they justify spending this much on services. They're like, well, if we can make you this much based on the data, this is how much our services cost. How does that sound, kind of thing, rather than just going in like, oh, we're going to do all these services for you and this is the price. It's sort of like, okay, this is the end goal. This is what we can help you achieve based on your parameters, your setup, your situation, your email list, your audience. And then that's what we can get you. And then this is how much it costs. And I think he's finding it a lot easier to sell that across his company.
Maybe so. When we work with our customers, and you brought up a really good example of how many new customers do you want us to onboard. So we really do encourage marketing people to think again in customer-centric terms, because marketing is the only function in the organization that has the word market in it, which is all encompassing. That includes the market, the competition, and customers, unlike a customer-centric organization or customer service or sales or some other group. So we are all encompassing in terms of what we do. And we include existing and prospective customers because it's the entire market. Right. And so when you're being customer-centric in your measures, that helps the business have clarity around, okay, we're going after X number of net new customers in this existing market with this product, or we're going after X number of new customers in a new market with an existing product, or X number of new customers among our customers, or X number of new sales among our customers for an existing product. So it is all different kinds of permutations, and a lot of times people will talk in terms of revenue, and this is a mistake. So I'm going to just be really bold and say that. Sure. We don't market to buckets of revenue. That's not what we market to. And we don't have typically in marketing control over the price of what the product or service will be, especially in B2B in the world we live in, that is a complex products with a consultative sell where it's not a widget, right? So there is customization. There's all kinds of things that go into what might affect the end price that the sales people and the company will eventually negotiate. So we don't market to buckets of revenue. So we need to have real clarity around what is the end game in terms of customers. What kind of customers? Are they new? Are they existing? Which products, which markets? And then that will help us really determine whether or not we are helping the companies succeed. And that is much better than talking about revenue, because we don't really get a chance to control what that number looks like.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. And it's something I encountered too, like working with accountants, is the difference between, say, an individual client who wants a tax return and a business who needs ongoing bookkeeping, payroll, compliance, all of that. So it's one thing to be like, oh, I just want more customers. And it's like, okay, like you mentioned, what industry do you want them in? What service types are you looking for? How big is the company or the customer? And really thinking about not just I want more customers, but what type of customers, because a business client could be worth 10 to 15 times what an individual client is worth, for instance. So, or more.
And it probably is a different buying journey. Different people
Yes.
are involved in the decision-making process. The sales cycle is probably different. What you need in terms of touch points is also probably different. So many different things. And this is true whether you're an accounting firm, an architectural firm, a law firm, many professional services companies. So this is applicable beyond just accounting firms, right? And it gets even more and more applicable the more complicated more complicated the buying journey, and the more complex the product. So your point being, it's one thing if you just want someone who's going to do a tax return. It's another if you're a business and you're looking for tax and audit and compliance and whatever. That's more complex. It's more complicated. So these are all considerations in putting together marketing. And what we're talking about is actually the upstream. We're actually having a conversation about segmentation, personas, buying journeys, all of those things. And that's all part of really having a good handle on the upstream. And we find that, unfortunately, for many organizations, they have an idea. They put together a plan, maybe at the beginning of a year or beginning of every quarter. But then as time goes on, they find themselves inundated with random acts of things they can do, whether that's random acts of marketing or random acts of selling, opportunistic sales deal that was random, but takes up tremendous resources from the organization, or a new idea that a customer has that is going to affect how you do service implementation, whatever it might be, that turns into a disconnected random act that begins to, in our world, like you and I would talk about scope creep, change the scope, right? And therefore takes more time, takes more money, steals strategic capacity from the organization. So it's really valuable to be able to have real conversations when you're in marketing, because we are aware a lot of random acts occur. It's not the only place, but a lot happen in marketing, a lot of random acts. This next new idea for another piece of content. If we only could add this new piece of content, another piece of video, if we could only write one more article, create another, whatever it might be, right? So how hard could that be?
Right.
But if we have a real conversation about how is that going to move the needle that we've agreed to, what outcome is that going to be attached to? Because if we're outcome oriented with customer centric outcomes, and we have clarity around what success is, then we can have a real conversation, right? About which outcome is this going to help us achieve? How much additional yardage are we going to get, so to speak? How much additional yardage are we going to get, or value, if we do this additional random act? Where does it fit into this, what we've already doing? Lots of questions that allow us to maybe take a moment before we just charge in and, with a random act. I'm not saying we shouldn't do them. I'm just saying we probably ought to be more deliberate, intentional, thoughtful about them. And in marketing, it's really easy, especially when, again, for those folks who are in the trenches, it's just another email campaign. It's just another touch in an email. It's just another blog post. But it is a random act. And then the question becomes, well, what did we get for our money? And why didn't we see a better value, and blah, blah, blah. And it all starts potentially with the fact that we were in the world of random acts.
I think that's a really good point to make. And it's something I came across in one of the business books I've read. I can't think of the title right now, but and it talked about that same thing of what is the limiting factor in a business, or like you mentioned, in a marketing campaign. Is this actually going to move the needle? Is it going to get us toward the goal? Because if it's not, then maybe we park it, maybe we bench it, maybe we take that time and put it towards something that will move the needle and will make a difference to the marketing and will bring in more customers, especially when you have, clients who are on a monthly fee, and there's only a certain amount of time that you can really allocate, or a certain amount of content that can be created for that client within those parameters. And so it's like, yeah, what is going to move the needle? And instead of just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, it's like being very strategic about, yeah, I think that's really cool.
Yes. And you'd be surprised how easy it is to get into the vortex, sucked into the vortex of life.
Productive.
Right. People come to work, they want to do things, they want to make a difference. This is why plans are really critical, having good plans, because then you know what you're really trying to accomplish. It's, going into any game, whether that's, to your point, you used home runs, or down here in Texas, we talk about football. It's almost like a ideology here. So whatever the metaphors are that work in your organization, you would go in with a game plan. I mean, it doesn't matter what endeavor it is. I mean, if even people who play golf have a game plan for that round. So having clarity around the game plan and executing that game plan and being very clear about what it requires. I use golf sometimes as a great example of the difference between measuring a campaign and creating a dashboard, because a lot of marketing organizations, again, think they're creating dashboards when they may be creating an attribution model, or clicking on their CRM tool, or their marketing automation tool, which are all have data, visualized data in some way, which might look like a dashboard. But if you can't make decisions from it in terms of business decisions, probably not a performance management dashboard. And the metaphor with golf is really helpful, because when you go, do you play golf, Ellie?
No.
Me. But I'm married to someone who plays a lot.
Watch it.
It's the most painful thing to do is watch golf.
It was funny when I was like a kid.
All the golfers listening to this podcast, but I have heard a lot about golf in the last 40 years of marriage. And so my point here is, when you go to play a round of golf, they give you a scorecard, right? They give you a scorecard, and that scorecard tells you what the performance target is for every hole if you want to play par golf. So, right? So the scorecard tells you the performance target. It also tells you how hard or easy that hole is going to be,
Right.
and gives you so bunch of other information. And then you play, and you keep track not only of your score, but you're also, if you're in my husband's group, you're playing with some kind of, points and gambling. And sometimes he comes home with, I made $3 today, and he's all excited, or I lost $5 today, and he's, in the toilet. But whatever, the big deal. But my point being, it's a scorecard. And when we run a campaign, we have a scorecard. But that's not a performance management dashboard. In golf, a performance management dashboard would help you make decisions that say, do I need to see improvement? For example, do I tend to get have balls in regulation when I drive, or do I end up out of bounds a lot? Am I someone who ends up in the traps a lot, or do I end up, on the green a lot? Do I have to have a lot of putts to get in, or do I have a good short putting game? Putts per hole, greens in regulation. These are terms in golf. But the point is, those are kind of key performance indicators about your game. And in marketing, those key performance indicators are not your campaign. Those are measures for that scorecard. The key performance indicators are your business, like customer lifetime value, or share of wallet, or market share improvement, or net revenue retention, or things along those lines, so that you understand in marketing, what are you doing to impact those positively, hopefully, impact those KPIs, not how that campaign performed, that one game, right? That one scorecard, but your performance management dashboard should be giving you insight so that you can actually be bringing value and impact to the key performance indicators for the company.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a really important point, and kind of touches on the okay, what's working, and let's analyze it so we can repeat it and duplicate that, but also what's not working so we can avoid it. And I think usually businesses will get stuck in one or the other and think, oh, like we know why we're doing well, and it's like, well, do you actually do you know where those customers came from and what link, and are they actually coming from your ads or are they coming from some other place like a podcast interview, or like what's the tracking and do we have accuracy around that? And yeah, like I love your golf example of having parameters and then checking like, well, are we out of bounds here or are we, within par? So really checking the performance and checking that whole kind of life cycle of the marketing to go, are we getting the results? Are we going towards the goals? Or are we just kind of running around like headless chickens and going, why isn't it working? Why aren't I getting more customers? I'm spending thousands of dollars a month on marketing. Why isn't it working?
So that's a really good point. And you brought up something important, Ellie. You talked about the various channels, right? Whether those what those channels might be and how they are working, which falls into the world of attribution,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're always going to have those channels, but you also need to be thinking about your strategy, right? The channels might change. And here's a good example of that. And I'm going to stick with sports because we started off with home runs. So we'll just run through every single sport we both know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting and fun. All right. So I used to compete as an amateur in triathlons, sprint triathlons specifically. I spent a dozen years competing.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so I'm gonna draw on my own personal experience since I've just
sprinting.
so I've shared everything I know. I've shared everything I know about golf.
Next sport.
Right. But I can talk a long time about triathlons. But the point is, in a triathlon, it is always the same three things:
Mm-hmm.
swim, bike, run. Always. Now, it's not always in that order, but 90-something% of the time, it is in that order. I have been in a few triathlons where the order was not that, but that's very rare. Very, very rare. So my point being that we only have so many channels for marketing that we can leverage. In sprint triathlons, there are those three things, plus your transition area, which counts, by the way, because it is eating up the clock and it's a race. So it's all about time, right? So, but where the strategy comes in is understanding where you are, where you excel against the competition, and where you don't excel, and where you can make significant strides in improvement and where you can't. So for example, I did not learn to swim until I was well into my adult years. All right. And I am going to compete in triathlons.
That's cool.
And just told you that the most often first leg is a swim. But not all swims are the same length, and not all swims are the same. Some are in pools and some are in open water. Some are in open water, could be a tank. Another could be a man-made lake, or it could be a flowing river, right? So, or a regular lake. So it's not all the same, but understanding, hey, swimming is not my strength. I'm going to get proficient enough that I'm not going to drown, but this is not where I'm going to excel. And there's going to be people in the water who swam in college on scholarships. And so therefore, they're going to be really good swimmers. So I'm going to think about, I'm going to pick races where the swim leg is a shorter ratio of the legs, right? So it's a shorter amount of time. And I'm going to think about, where am I better? Am I better in open water or am I better in pools? Turns out I'm better in open water, when open is much better than a seated race. So in a pool. So that becomes part of your strategy as a company. And that's a key job of marketing, is to help make those kinds of business decisions. And you have to have good data around that. And knowing I'm probably not going to make significant strides and improvement in swimming. Now, in business, we can make significant strides and improvement, but there's some things we just cannot always change. It might have to do with the technology or our supply chain or whatever it is that we cannot necessarily control, or to control it or to improve it would be an enormous investment. We'd have to make a decision around that. Right. Then you look at, for example, biking, which is something, again, I didn't learn to do until I was well into my adult years. And it just turned out that I'm really good at that. Mm-hmm. And not only am I really good at that, but because of my size, I'm really good at hills. Much better than many of my competitors, races that are hilly compared to flatland races, for example, which and I'm definitely much better when it's not tremendously windy because I don't have enough weight against the wind, right? So these are things you take into account. This is marketing. What I'm talking about here, this is marketing. This is not about creating an ad. This is really about strategy. And so now, knowing what I know, if as a marketer, my strategy would be, I'm going to look for races that I can have short swims in open water and long bike legs because that are hilly, right? And we'll talk later about the run and other things. I'm going to have to get really good at transitions because if I'm going to win, I'm going to have to make sure that I'm in those transitions the shortest amount of time. And that's an operational efficiency thing, right? So one thing is about really becoming really good at something, and the other is operational efficiency. This again, I'm talking about upstream marketing. I just told you about segmenting. We talked about strategy. This is the world of marketing then that takes data, right, and analysis and getting clarity on, again, what do I need to do, right? And so if I'm going to, pay attention and want to race for a season, I'm going to be thinking about that season and the plan and the races I'm going into. And I'm going to be careful about doing anything random because, like, for example, maybe I won't go do a marathon in that season. That would be a random act because training for a marathon is a lot different training than training for a triathlon. And so hopefully maybe that metaphor can help some of the people that are listening to this in your community, to this idea about marketing, thinking beyond just the blog posts and making sure it has SEO and using an AI tool to write content and picking and doing pay-per-click ads and all the other things that we tend to get excited about doing, but only should come into play once we have the upstream in place.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so then I love that analogy too, enjoying the metaphors. And so then I guess the question I have is, say I'm a client, I come to you, I'm like, yeah, I want to do my marketing. How do you decide what channels or what the strategy is? Like, what does that process look like in your company?
Oh, great question. And the first thing I would be asking is, well, what's your plan? I would start with, what are the things that to your comment, what does success look like? And we have a very clear formula, what we want to see in terms of the structure of outcomes. And if those outcomes are not defined in that structure, we're going to help them do that because that is really the foundation for putting together the plan, right? And then we build out the plan first before we ever talk about activities, which would be, we're going to do, these 3 trade shows, or we're going to do trade shows, and these are the 3 we're going to do, and we're going to do a masterclass program, and this is what we're going to do, which is what a lot of people jump to right away. We say, let's not worry yet about that. Let's get clarity around what are the outcomes. I say this to people in marketing, and I'll say this in this podcast. Once you know what the business outcomes are in marketing, if you don't know what they are, you need to know what they are before you do anything. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. I just changed metaphors on you. We're not talking about a board game. But do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go directly to jail if you do not know the business outcomes for your organization in customer-centric, measurable terms. Because then the next question you should be asking and doing in your plan is, of these outcomes, which ones of these are you expecting marketing to positively impact? Because not every outcome may be affected by marketing.
Right.
And then the next question on that will be, how will you know that we did? Because if you can answer those 3 questions, I can begin to put together a plan and a strategy. And then from that, we can get creative and talk about how will we bring that strategy to life? What will that program look like? And so the strategy was going to be a brand ambassador program, or is the strategy going to be a sponsorship initiative? Or is the strategy going to be building out ecosystem partners? Whatever they might be. Is the strategy going to be an adjacent market strategy? Whatever those strategies might be, then we can bring those to life in a program and build out the tactics and activities. But if you don't know the top part, you can't build the strategy, right? If you don't build the strategy, why would you even be doing why would you even be doing tactics and activities and campaigns without understanding the strategy?
Right. It comes back to that randomness idea that you mentioned before. It's kind of like, how can you like basically when you want to build this boat or a ship to go somewhere, but if you don't know where you're going, how do you know what materials you're going to need or how big the boat should be or all of those kind of things that you said come after like knowing what is your goal, what is your plan, what does success look like? So that's
We just jumped to shipbuilding.
we did jump ship.
Awesome.
Every metaphor today.
Yes, lots of metaphors.
Yeah.
It's all good. All good.
No, it's all good. So, okay, kind of switching gear a bit because I want to obviously talk about AI as well. And I know you mentioned that your firm is using an AI program called Sintra. So I just wanted to know, like, could you explain like what it is, what are you using it for, how is it helping, and what does it look like in your organization? Yeah.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. And I just want to be on the table with everybody. This is an experiment for our company. We've been using it. I am not suggesting, disclaimer here, I'm not telling anyone to go off and buy Sintra, and I have no affiliation with them. It just happened to be one that we ran across that made sense for us because we're a boutique firm. We're a small to medium-sized boutique, a growth strategy firm. So we're not going to go spend buku bucks on some very big AI platform. That's not really making sense for us. And the work that we do, as we do. So we're not we're never going to use an AI platform for the work we perform for our customers. That would just be completely antithetical and in opposition of everything this company stands for in terms of our integrity and our service to our customers and just everything that we stand for. But we do use it, and I'll share with you an example. Uh, I write a lot of content. Most all the articles that are on the website, I would say 99% of them I've written. All right. So we write our own content. We do not use AI to write our content, even to this day. Our editor is still a human being. So,
can I just jump in and ask why? I'm just curious.
because I want it to be authentic, and it is what I think. And as at the helm of the organization, and is also modeling the way. Yes, it is a little more grueling and time consuming, and I really have to think about it. And I want to maintain that it's very human. I But here's how we have an example of using an AI in Sintra. So Sintra has AI helpers that are already parsed into tasks, right? So there's Soshi for social media, and we'll come back to her in a moment. And we have given them pronouns, so they already come named. Visi is the virtual assistant, but we use Visi for visual. And we don't have graphic designers on staff. And as you can imagine, graphic designers are expensive. But what we do use our AI platform for is helping us build the images that go with the content. Right. And working with Visi on what we want those images to be. So creating what the style guideline is for our company, what are the parameters for good images, what kind of images, so that we can have a consistent library of images. And then we build images for every article and LinkedIn post, and we use Visi to do that. And that has certainly streamlined our process of working with a graphic designer. Now, and sometimes it's very frustrating because it's hard to convey something sometimes to the AI that might be easier to convey to a graphic designer, because I could scratch something out and show it to that person. Can't really do that with Visi. And Visi cannot just enhance one that she's already made, like a graphic designer, where I could say, oh, I really like that, but could you make this be a little bigger and this a little smaller? Very difficult to do with an AI platform. But that is an example of using Sintra. Another example is that inside Sintra is Dexter. He does data analysis. And so, for example, here's a fun thing we did with that is we took all of my LinkedIn recommendations. I'm very blessed to have like over 50 LinkedIn recommendations. And we asked Dexter to analyze them for what they might have in common in terms of major themes around what people have valued about working with me. And so that's something that would have taken a lot more time to do for us. We would do that. Obviously, we would do that differently if we were doing that with a customer, but to getting that and getting an understanding of what's being mentioned, what are the primary words, how frequently are they being mentioned, and being able to do that very quickly. So that's another example of that particular helper. And there are and building out, for example, a model.
Right.
We do use, here is a way we do use, again, sintra.ai. They have Emmy, which does email. I know all their names. And when we,
Because there's different characters.
they
Are
are,
they like AI agents or
they are helpers. They're not,
helpers? Okay.
but they are helpers. And we have been looking at some agent capability too, but they are helpers. And when we have team meetings, we talk about them like they're members of the team with real names and personalities. But so Emmy, I might say to Emmy, I might craft an email. This is where I might use Emmy and Sintra for content or copy. Well, I'll say, Emmy, I've written an email that's going to go out, and this is the series of emails that I want to go out on a particular campaign. Like right now, we're in the middle of the campaign on random acts. And what are the different kinds of random acts? What do they cost you? We've done a bunch of research. This kind of a random act can cost you this kind of much money or this much time or whatever it might be. And we've crafted all of that and being very left brain oriented, which our content tends to be kind of left brain, but we want the emails to be a little bit more right brain, right? A little bit more, a little less about the numbers and just the stats. Give me the facts, ma'am.
Right.
Else. I'll say, here's what I'm thinking about writing, and then I will allow Emmy to make some suggestions on how to warm that up and make it be a little more on the right brain side. Again, using our style guide parameters. So being clear about what are acceptable parameters. It's not ever going to sound like Charlie, like a comedian, because that's not our style. But these are the parameters for what we want the tone and style of our emails to be. And so we might say, here's what we've written. How might you warm this up? Again, not writing from scratch, starting with something is an example, because we know what the message is that we want to convey. We understand our customers. That's our job. We understand what is motivating them, the pain points that they have. We're the ones talking to them on a daily basis and hearing that. So we want to be able to communicate that, but we may want to warm that up in some way. And so those are 3 examples of how we've been using this particular platform for our purposes. Was that helpful? Was that what you were looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. And so a follow-up question I have would be, do the helpers kind of go out, like, does the helper go to your LinkedIn or go to your emails and integrate with the platform, or do you have to sort of copy paste kind of into the tool?
So it's a helper, and in that way, it's a copy and paste, whereas an agent would have be more autonomous. And that's why we have kind of been exploring potential agents. We are in the middle of our own technology migration. We try to drink our own champagne in the things that we do. And the advice that what would we tell our customer? We should be doing some of the same thing. And so we're in the middle of a technology migration. We're putting everything on one key platform, and that platform does have AI agent integration capability. And so we are exploring that. The current platform right now that we are on, it doesn't integrate to that platform. So I'm not sure. I know that they're aware of that platform and they may be working on it, but it doesn't do that today. And it's, again, not an agent in that it doesn't do anything autonomous. It is a helper. And I try to use that language carefully, because we're still, I don't know when, how things are moving so quickly in the AI space. But we're still early stages.
Very
And so
early.
things are rapidly evolving. And so I'm trying really hard to maintain a vocabulary with my own team and not get sloppy in my vocabulary. And it's easy to do. We get sloppy in vocabulary in a lot of ways. We try really hard not to get sloppy. And vocabulary matters, because we can be talking about the same thing, but using different words, and that can make people feel like they're not on the same page, when really they're not talking about anything differently. They're just using different words. So having clarity around vocabulary is really important, I think.
That's cool. No, I think that's a good point. And so
kind of going full circle, Ellie, before I forget this thought, because
go for it.
I'm old and things go out of my brain really quick. Going full circle with that, back to what we were talking about, and vocabulary and accountants and finance people. one place we get messy and sloppy in marketing is the words measured, metrics, data, and KPIs. We're sloppy, and that's not a good thing when you're talking with accounting people. Those are very unique and different words. They do not mean the same thing, but we use them interchangeably oftentimes by marketing people, and we need to not be sloppy in our vocabulary around those words.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's very important.
Thank you.
No, no worries.
Just wanted to get that thought out.
Yeah. No, I think that's important and helps to identify, obviously there's words like what are the tasks that we're looking at and obviously the entire process. So are there any other AI tools or interesting insights you've had in the space?
Well, one of the things that we do, we have up an application which is called Clicky that we have attached to our website so we can monitor in real time website traffic. I find it a lot easier to use than Google Analytics, GA4, which we also have, but Clicky
It's not very user friendly.
Clicky can be quite addictive. And we are monitoring how many AIs have been coming to our website because it will tell us.
That's
So we've been monitoring the increase in ChatGPT visits and Perplexity and Claude, and
it tells you each side.
It does. So we're trying to figure and understand that one of the things that people maybe again get sloppy around, AI is not a search tool. Right? You don't put in, if you put in, and Christopher Penn, if anyone is interested in following somebody who writes on AI, Christopher Penn does a really good job. I like his newsletters. And he's written on this idea that the difference between AI and search. And one of his recent examples was, if you put in these 3 or 4 terms inside an AI, you're going to get something very different. And if you put it in each AI platform, they're going to give you something very different because it's not search, right? So if you put it in Perplexity, you're going to get something. If you put it in Gemini, you're going to get something. If you put it in ChatGPT or Claude, you're going to get something different every time because they're not really doing search, right?
Right.
And so, and one change in your prompt could change exactly what the output is, because it's, again, a very different kind of interaction. So I think you need to remember that what you're using AI for versus what you want to do in terms of search is an important thing, because we do need to think about AI in the way that we write content, our video, our everything, because the AI is going to be interacting with all of that.
Absolutely. No, it's interesting too. I found that even sometimes, like if I get an error message in, say, ChatGPT, I'll copy and paste the prompt. And sometimes, because obviously before it gets an error, it might get halfway through, and then I'll paste the prompt to get the full answer. And it's given me like a different angle to the original angle. So even within the same AI tool, you can even get different responses, even with the same or very similar prompts. So yeah, it's super interesting.
Yes, and remember that it is learning, and so eventually, if you're not careful, it will just give you back what you want to hear. So you have to be very careful with AI that you don't end up in an echo chamber. We talk about this a lot, about ending up in an echo chamber. And that's again a red flag. So be careful if you're going to put something in or try to do an analysis, what you're doing, because you might end up just with something that's useless that you think is good, but is really not good. So beware of the echo chamber.
Very important. Yes, things to consider. And so, sorry, we're kind of gone over slightly on time, but I feel like I could just keep chatting with you. But for people who want to find out more about what you do and maybe work with you or connect, where can they connect with you online?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. They're welcome to reach out to me there, or by email, Laura, LAURAP, as in Patterson, at VisionEdge Marketing. So vision like in sight, edge like the edge of an eye, marketing, all one word, all spelled out.com. And they can just reach out with an email. Welcome to visit us at the website. We have lots of wonderful content on the topic of AI, on upstream marketing, or anything else, on measurement, anything that might have piqued their interest in today's conversation. And I hope everyone took away at least one good idea.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they did. It's been a really cool conversation. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.